Okay. One thing we are taught is that the life of the Lord is a perfect pattern for our own. That the Lord's life is a perfect pattern for our own. And so I approached this morning wondering what we might learn about that perfect pattern in the geography and in the places that Jesus lived and traveled. Now this is something, an idea that has kind of been forming over the last, for a while really. And I think I mentioned maybe in Sunday school a couple weeks ago that I just wish I had it clear in my mind where the Lord, that map, where the Lord lived and worked and how often he traveled north and south and in this land, the region that he lived, and what that means. Because in our teachings we know that we talk about this most special idea of correspondences, that the people, the things in the Bible are a part of us and can teach us things, and that the same is true of places. So this is where I'm coming from, and I have to say this is a work in progress. And I spent the week flipping back and forth between Scripture, trying to read where Jesus traveled, where he left, flipping back and forth with the words of Scripture to the map in the back, and then to some of our commentaries, trying to find just little hints of what that means. We talk about moving from place to place is a change of state, even, not just place, physical place, but a change of state. So here we go. And what's interesting, just 3 months ago today was Christmas. Just 3 months, and this is already our 5th week of Lent. So there wasn't that much time between Christmas and Lent this year to think of, for me, to really, we've spoken of and thought of a few of the stories and teachings in the Lord's life, but this helps me to think about this and kind of helps sum it all up for me. So I hope that you will find something useful here this morning. So what we have here, and I hope you can see it, and if you can't see it, I hope you'll move closer. In fact, what I'm going to do is I think I'll just try and move this maybe a little more to the center. Now, my map, obviously, is a simplified version of the place, and what was happening in Jesus' time, of course, in the Old Testament times, this was at one point all the land of Israel, and it became separated. And in Jesus' time, there's basically 3 regions. So we have the area of Judea, the southern area. We have Samaria in the middle, and Galilee here in the north. Okay, so where do we start? This is a little Bible trivia, too, for you. I know you'll appreciate that. Bible trivia. Where does the Lord's life begin? Shout it out.
Bethlehem.
Exactly. Bethlehem. In Judea, exactly. So this is Bethlehem down here. And hope our map stays. Okay. Now Bethlehem was also the birthplace of David and Benjamin in the Old Testament times. And what I always love remembering about Bethlehem is that it was also called, does anyone remember what the name meant? The house of
bread.
Bread, exactly. So I have to add a little figure or a little picture. So bread, which which I love, because not only are we, of course, learning about or relearning or remembering Jesus' life, but right away we see that this is multi-layered, this whole story. And we see right away that the Lord came as nourishment to our souls. So we have the house of bread, and right away we have this imagery of nourishment. And what I also love to remember about that is he was placed in a manger. A manger is a place where animals would eat. There's something about his very life, even at the beginning, which is about and speaks to nourishment. So this is where we begin. And we can think of this also. We have the Lord's life, we have this symbolism of nourishment, and then when Christmas time comes and Advent, we often think about the Lord being born anew in us. So when we think about the Lord's birth, we could think about it maybe in childhood sometime, if you remember, when you first really were conscious of learning about the Bible, about Jesus, a beginning sense of right and wrong. Or you could think about what happens over and over again in our life as we experience something new. Now, Bethlehem, I did have some verses handed out. And part of this also, what we feel in this picture is that part of this is there's a prophetic part. So Bethlehem was part of prophecy. Karen, do you have Micah? Okay. This
But you, Bethlehem, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come from me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are of old, from ancient times.
Right. So Bethlehem is mentioned, and we can tie back what we read in the New Testament with what we find in the Old Testament about Bethlehem. Okay, so we have this beginning effort. The Lord has been born. Now, does anyone remember, we don't stay in Bethlehem very long. Where does the Lord go? Egypt. Exactly. Herod is out to do away with this young Jesus. He doesn't want to be threatened, his rule. So Joseph is warned in a dream, and they go to Egypt. Now, I had made something for Egypt here, and then I realized that I really didn't think about it on my map, and Egypt would be like way over here somewhere. So he's pushed way out of the scene here, which speaks to a couple of things. The first one is that Egypt we think of as a place of knowledge, because we can think of the hieroglyphics, we can think about the pyramids, we still don't know how they are built. It represents a time of knowledge and gaining knowledge. And there's an idea here that when the Lord went to Egypt, what we see and reminded of is that he was divine, but he was also human like us and had to learn. And his mind wasn't just filled already with all this knowledge. He had to learn like the rest of us. Now we are told he progressed at a rate that was much more rapid than anything we could experience, but he still had to learn Scripture, which he used later. Still had to learn like the rest of us. So that can kind of picture that time in the Lord's life. But what it can also picture, when we think about what it means that we have this new beginning, is that it's shoved out of sight. And that is, if we do think of those times when we kind of had a start, we kind of had a good intention about something, and then we decide, I'm just going to not worry about that right now. And it stays in our memory, but we're not using it. So it stays in our memory. It's a knowledge we have, but we're not using it. Now, that was easy for me to think of an example. And I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, I shared my bus stop story as a child. I don't know if you remember this. Some of you. I was probably 6 or 7, there we were at a bus stop, and I thought it would be funny for us to hide behind the tree when the one girl who hadn't come yet, she would think she would come to the bus stop and think she had missed it. And I thought this was my idea, to hide behind the tree. And then she comes, and we didn't get out from behind the tree. She walked all the way home and actually missed the bus. Oh. So, I know, this is on my top 10. I feel terrible about it. Because I knew, it would have been funny up to the point where she had said, no, we're still here. That would have been okay. But letting her actually leave, so I felt bad about that. And I was thinking, see, in that moment when I decided, let's just stay behind this tree, that was like pushing Jesus all the way into Egypt. But The moment I realized and thought and started to feel bad about what I had done, that was like inviting the Lord's presence back. And so now we have the Lord's presence back onto our map. Now, what we find is that there was still something to worry about. Herod had passed away, but the way was not clear yet. But when we call the Lord back out of Egypt, there is a scripture verse from Hosea 11. Does anyone have that?